Welcome to the Oxford Real Estate Report. Before we get into today's episode, I want to flag something up front. This is not a traditional real estate episode. Most of the time on this podcast, we're talking about Oxford real estate, housing trends, development, zoning, land use, and investment across the Oxford community. That's the lens I usually operate through as a real estate broker. But I'm also an attorney, and from time to time, legal issues arise that, while not directly about property, have real economic consequences on local real estate markets. This is one of those cases. Today's episode looks at the ongoing legal dispute between Ole Miss quarterback Trinidad Chambliss and the NCAA. On its face, this is an athletics eligibility case. But in a college town like Oxford, the strength and stability of Ole Miss football has measurable economic ripple effects, from game day spending and hospitality to short-term rentals to alumni engagement, donor activity, and long-term investment decisions tied to the university's national profile. Before we go further, a quick legal disclaimer. I'm an attorney, but this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. Nothing in this episode should be taken as legal advice. I am not representing any party discussed, and listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship. All analysis in this episode is based on publicly filed court documents and publicly available NCAA materials. Any discussion of legal claims or potential outcomes reflects allegations and legal principles, not findings of fact or conclusions by a court. If you need legal advice regarding your own situation, you should consult a qualified attorney licensed in the appropriate jurisdiction. With that said, let's get into it. To understand the legal dispute involving Trinidad Chambliss and the NCAA, it's necessary to start with the underlying facts exactly as they are alleged in the petition, because the legal claims are built tightly around that timeline. Please note this is not an exhaustive review of all the information, analysis, and claims made in the petition. According to the petition, Trinidad Chambliss first enrolled full-time at Ferris State University in the fall of 2021, which marked the beginning of his 5-year eligibility period under NCAA rules. From the outset of his collegiate career, Chambliss alleges that he experienced medical and physical conditions that impaired his ability to train, condition, recover, and perform at the level required for intercollegiate football. As a result of those limitations, Ferris State made an institutional decision to redshirt him during the 2021 to 2022 season, and he did not compete in any outside intercollegiate contest during that period. The petition further alleges that Chambliss did not compete in any outside intercollegiate football contest during the fall of 2022 season either. Although he remained affiliated with the team and appeared on the roster, Chambliss contends that his medical condition continued to affect his ability to train and perform, and that he was unable to meaningfully compete during that season. The petition further alleges that Chambliss's medical condition during the 2022 season was documented at the time through contemporaneous medical care, reflecting ongoing symptoms and physical limitations that affected his ability to train, condition, and perform. The petition also alleges that subsequent medical evaluation and treatment, including an adenotonsillectomy performed in December 2024, later clarified the nature and cause of those limitations. According to the petition, treating physicians subsequently provided medical analysis explaining how the condition present during the 2022 season impaired Chambliss's ability to compete at that time, even though the full scope of the condition was not definitively resolved until later. Chambliss's first appearance in outside intercollegiate competition occurred during the fall of 2023, when he played in approximately 5 games for Ferris State. He then served as Ferris State's starting quarterback during the 2024 season. After the 2024 season concluded and following surgical treatment and recovery, Chambliss transferred to the University of Mississippi in the summer of 2025. According to the petition, Ole Miss compliance personnel advised Chambliss that the 2025 season would constitute only his 3rd season of intercollegiate competition, and that he would therefore have the opportunity to compete in a 4th season during the fall of 2026. Chambliss alleges that he relied on those representations in transferring and later became Ole Miss's starting quarterback during the 2025 season. Let's take a quick break before we go into the petition's analysis.
This episode is brought to you by Rosenblatt Real Estate here in Oxford, Mississippi. Bill Rosenblatt is a real estate broker and attorney, and his approach is grounded in understanding how legal, economic, and institutional factors affect property values in Oxford and Lafayette County. If you're buying, selling, or investing and want a clear, data-driven perspective, Rosenblatt Real Estate is here to help.
Welcome back. Now let's continue with the discussion. The present dispute arose when the NCAA denied a request seeking confirmation of Chambliss's eligibility for the 2026 season, prompting the filing of this lawsuit. Before applying the facts of this case, it is important to clearly define the NCAA's governing standards, because Chambliss's claims rise or fall based on how those standards are written and intended to operate. The dispute is anchored in the NCAA Division I 5 to play 4 rule, which establishes the baseline eligibility framework for all Division I student athletes. As quoted in the petition, that rule provides that a student athlete shall not engage in more than 4 seasons of intercollegiate competition in any one sport, and that those seasons must occur within 5 calendar years from the beginning of the term in which the student athlete first registered for a minimum full-time program of studies at a collegiate institution. The 5-year clock runs continuously, but the rule itself anticipates situations in which strict application would prevent an athlete from completing 4 seasons of competition. That anticipation appears in Division I bylaw 12.6.1.7.1, which the petition quotes as providing that a waiver of the 5-year period of eligibility is designed to provide a student athlete with the opportunity to participate in 4 seasons of intercollegiate competition, and that such a waiver may be granted based on objective evidence under specified circumstances. This provision confirms that the NCAA's eligibility system is not absolute. Rather, the bylaws expressly contemplate relief when the 5-year limitation would otherwise operate unfairly in light of circumstances beyond the athlete's control. The petition then sets out the specific circumstances recognized under the bylaw. Those include situations in which the student athlete did not use a season of intercollegiate competition due to an institutional decision to redshirt the student athlete, situations in which the student athlete was listed on the institution squad list and was eligible for competition during the segment of the season that concludes with the NCAA championship, and situations in which the student athlete was deprived of the opportunity to participate in intercollegiate competition in 1 or more seasons due to circumstances beyond the control of the student athlete or the institution. These circumstances define the structure of the waiver analysis and frame the questions the NCAA is supposed to ask when evaluating eligibility relief. The petition further explains how the NCAA defines circumstances beyond the control of the student athlete or institution. It quotes NCAA guidance stating that such circumstances include, but are not limited to, a situation clearly supported by contemporaneous medical documentation, which states that a student athlete was unable to participate in intercollegiate competition as a result of incapacitating physical or mental circumstances. This language establishes that medical or physical incapacity is an expressly contemplated basis for waiver relief, and that the inquiry centers on the athlete's ability to compete, not merely his affiliation with the team. Closely related to that concept is the NCAA's distinction between participation and competition. The petition emphasizes that NCAA rules differentiate between participation in team activities, such as practice, meetings, and conditioning, and actual competition in outside intercollegiate contests. Whether a season is used turns on competition, not on roster status or practice involvement. This distinction is foundational to the waiver framework, particularly in cases involving illness or injury, where an athlete may remain present with the team despite being unable to compete meaningfully. The petition also addresses how medical evidence is evaluated in this context. It quotes NCAA guidance stating that contemporaneous or other appropriate medical documentation from a physician, a medical doctor, who administered care at the time of the injury or illness, that establishes the student athlete's inability to compete as a result of the injury or illness shall be submitted with any hardship waiver request. The petition then quotes additional guidance clarifying that the NCAA is not limited to consideration of only contemporaneous medical documentation, and that its reconsideration standards were adjusted to permit new information to be submitted at any time, provided that such information is germane to the original assertions and was not readily available earlier. This guidance reflects an acknowledgement that medical conditions are not always fully diagnosed, understood, or documented at the moment they occur. Finally, the petition explains how the NCAA evaluates whether an illness or injury is considered incapacitating. It quotes NCAA guidance instructing staff to use the same analysis applied to hardship waivers when assessing incapacitating conditions, and further clarifies that it is not necessary for the incapacitating injury or illness to be the direct result of the student athlete's participation in organized practice or game competition. In other words, the origin of the illness need not be football related in order to qualify under the waiver framework. Against that legal backdrop, the petition applies Trinidad Chambliss's factual allegations to each component of the NCAA standards. Chambliss alleges that he first enrolled full-time at Ferris State University in the fall of 2021, triggering the start of his 5-year eligibility period. He further alleges that Ferris State made an institutional decision to redshirt him for the 2021 to 2022 season, and that he did not compete in outside intercollegiate contests during that year. Under the framework quoted in the petition, Chambliss contends this means he did not use a season of intercollegiate competition. With respect to the 2022 season, the petition alleges that Chambliss again did not compete in any outside intercollegiate football contest for Ferris State. Although he remained on the roster, the petition emphasizes the NCAA's distinction between participation and competition, and asserts that the absence of outside competition means that season likewise should not be counted as a used season. The petition then addresses the bylaws requirement that the athlete be deprived of the opportunity to compete due to circumstances beyond his control. Chambliss alleges that during the 2022 season he suffered from medical and physical conditions that impaired his ability to train, condition, recover, and perform at the level required for intercollegiate football. According to the petition, these conditions were not within his control and rendered him unable to meaningfully compete, even though he remained affiliated with the team. To support that claim, the petition relies on medical evidence and on the NCAA's own guidance regarding incapacitating illness or injury. Chambliss alleges that his condition constituted an incapacitating physical circumstance within the meaning of the waiver framework, and that it need not have been caused by football participation to qualify. He points to NCAA guidance instructing staff to apply hardship waiver analysis and to the explicit statement that an incapacitating illness need not be the direct result of organized practice or game competition. The petition further alleges that the waiver request submitted on his behalf was supported by appropriate medical documentation, including opinions from his treating physician addressing his inability to compete during the relevant period. Chambliss contends that this documentation satisfies the NCAA's requirement for contemporaneous or other appropriate medical documentation establishing inability to compete, and that it fits squarely within NCAA guidance permitting consideration of non-contemporaneous medical evidence and retrospective medical explanation. Despite that framework, Chambliss alleges that the NCAA denied the waiver by improperly narrowing its analysis. According to the petition, the NCAA focused on the timing and phrasing of medical documentation rather than evaluating the totality of the medical evidence presented. Chambliss claims this approach conflicts with the NCAA's own guidance permitting later submitted germane medical information and reflects a departure from the standards the NCAA adopted for evaluating incapacitating conditions. The petition also alleges that the NCAA failed to properly weigh or credit the opinions of Chambliss's treating physician, despite those opinions directly addressing his inability to compete during the 2022 season. In Chambliss's view, disregarding or discounting that medical evidence was inconsistent with the requirement that waiver decisions be based on objective evidence and a holistic assessment of the circumstances. In addition, the petition challenges public statements issued by the NCAA explaining the denial of the waiver. Chambliss alleges those statements mischaracterized the medical record and the reasons Ferris State redshirted him, portraying the redshirt decision as developmental rather than medical, and suggesting that the absence of contemporaneous documentation was dispositive. He contends those statements do not accurately reflect the waiver standards quoted in the petition or the evidence submitted in support of his request. Based on these allegations, Chambliss argues that the NCAA failed to apply its 5-year eligibility and waiver framework in good faith and in accordance with its own bylaws and interpretive guidance. He does not contend that the NCAA lacks discretion to grant or deny waivers. Rather, he alleges that the discretion afforded by the bylaws was exercised in a manner inconsistent with the standards the NCAA itself adopted, resulting in a wrongful denial of relief and the loss of what he contends should be his 4th season of intercollegiate football. As this case continues to develop, I'll be keeping a close eye on any court rulings, filings, or material updates, and will revisit it if and when there's something meaningful to report. Disputes like this matter not just from a legal perspective, but because of the broader economic and institutional effects they can have in a community like Oxford. If you found this discussion helpful, this is the type of analysis I aim to bring on the Oxford Real Estate Report, looking beyond headlines to understand how law, institutions, and economics intersect with our local real estate market. This episode is brought to you by Rosenblatt Real Estate here in Oxford, Mississippi, where I work as both a real estate broker and attorney, helping clients navigate buying, selling, and investing with clarity and context. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow the Oxford Real Estate Report wherever you listen to podcasts, and I'll see you next time.